welcome to year 2 of the Funding Love podcast. I'm Mallory Elrod.
And I'm Caitlin Duckworth. We are two adoptive moms that seek to love, support, and elevate all corners of the adoption triad, including adoptive families, adoptees, and birth parents.
We do that through honest conversation with both expert and everyday voices about all things adoption and more, all while running our nonprofit, Funding Love.
We create post-adoption experiences that strengthen bonds, build community, and restore people.
We are Funding Love,
the podcast.
Welcome to episode 85. Mal here, and this week Kate and I are turning our Funding Love baseball caps backwards and turning this podcast into a dad cast. We have two adoptive dads with us, Matt Appleby, and my personal fave since he is my husband, Tim Elrod. They are both biological and adoptive dads, and they share their experiences and thoughts on adoption. They answer questions like, was adoption always on your heart? What was the scariest part about beginning an adoption journey? And what would you say to a husband that isn't so sure adoption is for him and his family? The men also couldn't refrain from dropping a few sports references and Disney fun facts, so we hope that you enjoy this episode as much as we do. Let's give it a listen.
Welcome, guys, to the Funding Love podcast. We are on episode 85, and today we have returning guest Tim Elrod and Matt Appleby with us today. So welcome, guys. We're so glad to have you.
Hello, hello.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
So as many of you know, Tim is a returning guest. He is Mallory's husband, and Matt is a returning guest kind of via his wife, because we've had his wife, Rebecca Appleby, on as a guest before. So now it's Matt's turn, and we're so glad to have him.
Yes.
And this episode is going to be a little bit of fun because we don't often have men on the show. We really don't. Mal and I always we want to have some male voices. We want to have some male voices. So this is really cool to have two dads that we love and respect on this show. And so it's going to be a cool, different perspective we don't often get to have. So
yes. And I think, Caitlin, it's going to be a great episode because how many times in our episode do we circle around to this story where people have so many similar experiences of so, we talked about it a little bit, and then once we, were married and really started talking about it, was whoa.
Yeah.
So I think that this is going to be a great episode hearing it from the men's perspective, letting them share their voice and thoughts on adoption. So I think it's going to be great.
Totally. I mean, that is a very common theme in families. I feel like,
yes,
I always wanted to adopt. My husband knew that, and then we got married, and he's like, "What?"
Yeah. So why don't we start out by letting each of you guys tell the listeners a little bit about yourselves. So each of you go through and kind of tell us when you became a dad. Yeah, go. Why don't we start there? Tell us when you became a dad. How long have you been dadding, doing this dad life thing?
So I've been a dad since February of 2018. So a little over 5.5 years now.
Awesome.
Yes. And you brought your first little one into the world. She's a biological daughter, correct?
Yes, she is our biological daughter.
And then you're also a new dad now too, yeah?
Yeah, doing the process all over again, just a little differently. We did go the adoption route. So, he's just a little over 2 months now. So Saturday was 2 months.
Wow.
Aww.
Yeah, you are in the thick of that newborn life, huh?
Yeah, and I don't remember it being this hard. I'm like, maybe it's just I'm getting older. No, it's just, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
You look surprisingly awake, Matt. So that's impressive.
Yes, you really do. But this time around, you're juggling too.
Yeah, and
it's you have a newborn, but you also have another one that's there and didn't go anywhere.
And we're gluttons for punishment in this house. We thought, what would be a really good thing to do right now? Let's get a puppy.
No, you didn't.
You have a puppy too?
Yeah. He we got him over the summer before Eli was born. So yeah, we're just living the best life right now.
Oh, that is hilarious.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't know that I could do that, but that's impressive.
So go ahead, babe. Why don't you tell them how long you've been a dad?
So our oldest, Jack, was born in June of 2010. So it's been quite a while. That's a long time ago.
We've officially got a little...
Yeah, he's 13 years old. So,
now.
Yeah, so we have 4 kiddos. Currently 13, 11, 9, and 7. But it'll all start shifting in December. They all have their birthdays, and then we get the evens. So
Yeah.
And yeah, our youngest Mason is adopted, and then Lorelai and Cole are in the middle there. So yeah.
Yeah. What's Tim, since you've got the mic, what's your favorite thing about being a dad?
Favorite thing about being a dad, I would say, I feel like it's different per kid, which is weird. You know, it's like different being a boy dad and a girl dad. And so I'm glad that we don't just have boys or just have girls. Lorelai, you know, it's every night, Daddy, are you going to tuck me in? You know, even though she's in that weird stage right now where she wants to stay up really late like the older kids. And me and Mal, I feel like we have this rule where it's like if it's after like 8 or 8:30, like I'm not doing the tuck in thing. Like it's after hours, like we're done parenting, we're going to turn in. But then somehow she convinces me every night, you know, through an announcement via the Alexa. It's like, Dad, are you going to come say goodnight?
Yes. She wants to stay up like a big kid, but be tucked in like Daddy's little baby girl.
Yeah. So, you know, we keep telling her you can't have it both ways, but somehow she does. So, and then, you know, with the boys, it's just completely different. Like now we're able to watch sports together and play sports together and like, you know, be into music together. So I don't know.
It's fun watching you enjoy those things with
yeah.
them.
So it's kind of different for all of them, I would say, but lots of things.
I mean, I just being interested in their interests is kind of a cool thing. I mean, as your boys are getting older, I see that with you, Tim. You're, you know, and your interests are kind of overlapping, at least from what I can tell, you know, and from the outside looking in. Cole's really taken into your music scene, which I love watching him like love your bands.
Yep.
Which is so cool. Matt, what about you? What's your favorite thing about being a dad?
You know, and you know, with Eli being 2 months, not a lot going on there just yet, but looking forward to a lot of fun times here in the next you know, a few years once he starts, you know, moving around and talking. But for Evie, you know, I think over the past 5.5 years, going on 6, honestly, it's probably like our little tradition. So, you know, she wants to be tucked in every night. She wants to snuggle every night. And then, you know, just about every Friday night's kind of like movie night. So we'll sit down and watch a movie. She's starting to become I'm slowly introducing her to like sports and football. So she's becoming a Jaguars fan. Telling her not to like the Florida Gators. We don't like them. We like the Seminoles. So, and really just kind of sharing her interest in learning more about that. She's definitely in the mermaid phase. So, lots of mermaids around the house. The Little Mermaid, both the animated and the new one, has been played frequently. But, you know, it's just, I think spending time one-on-one with her is probably the most rewarding thing so far as parenting.
You know what I love about Matt is even though we don't cheer for the same college team, we share in our disdain for the Florida Gators. So
our mutual hatred, yeah.
And we're both Braves fans, so you know we
suffer together.
Yeah, we're used to this feeling of, you know, I grew up in the 90s, so we know how to lose, right? So but yeah, probably the most sports you guys have talked on your podcast in a while.
Absolutely,
so.
But it's a fun little switch up for some of our male listeners. Yeah. So here's one last little get to know you question that's kind of fun. If you were to do a Disney Dad Day with just you and your kiddos, like you're giving the wife a day off, you're taking the kids to the parks, just give us a really quick synopsis of like where you would want to take the kids, a ride you would go on, a snack you would have. What would that day look like as a dad day with your kids?
So we actually kind of do this. We haven't done it in a while. It's been a crazy summer, but there have been a few times, and you know, this is the blessing of being a Florida resident. We're about 2.5 hours ish from the park, so it's a little easier for us to do. So we have done this, and honestly, you know, for my wife and I, we'll go down. And we don't have to ride a ride, and we can still have a good time. We come back all the time, but I really do try to leave that day up to her completely. Whatever she wants to do, yeah, we'll go ride that. You want to ride Little Mermaid 5 times in a row? Sure, we can do that. You want to go meet Ariel? Yeah, let's go do that. So those are probably her favorite things to do in the park for sure. So
I love that. Just kind of leaving it up to her. Tim, I feel like I could kind of guess yours. I don't know why.
Well,
'Cause I feel like I've seen you do it enough.
we actually just did this on the last Funding Love birth mom trip. So you guys were doing your thing, and so we did our thing, and it consisted of Epcot and Geyser Point at the Wilderness Lodge. So we did some rides at Epcot. We went and watched Georgia football and had some of our favorite food at Geyser Point. Although, Matt, we've got a problem. I've gotten reports this week that the menu changed and the brisket dip is no longer available.
Oh. No way.
And I got less than desirable reviews on the new menu. So I'm a little skeptical here, but we'll have to go figure it out. Do some recon. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But, that's a great spot. The kids can run around. They've got the little grassy area. It's really
Our
nice.
kids do really enjoy a resort day too. So not just the parks, but
It doesn't have to be the parks.
I think they now anticipate the dad's going to take them to Epcot.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah.
Love that. Well, both of you are biological and adoptive dads, which is super cool. But was being a dad something that you thought about prior to meeting your wife? Have you always wanted to be a dad, each of you?
Yes. I would say yes.
Same for me.
Yeah. So it was always like one day I wish and dream of being a dad before your wife had influence as well. I love that.
I
That's
love
great.
that.
What about adoption? Was that something in your mind or in your heart individually before you met your wife?
No.
What about you, Matt?
I mean, I would say yes to a degree. Growing up, I had adopted friends, so from a young age, I got to see the benefits and the fruit of those relationships between them and their parents. So I think it's always been in the back of my mind as an option. Say, if we couldn't have kids, I would absolutely consider adoption. So
sure,
yeah, and I love
it wasn't off the table for you, is what
Right.
you're saying.
Yeah. I love that you guys are kind of in a little bit of like different corners there. So I'm excited to see the conversation, getting both perspectives. Cause I do remember Rebecca saying that you were not as opposed to it as like, say, Tim was in the beginning. But I also love that you both were wanting to be dads. I feel like it's not something that men like talk about, but that it is like a desire in men. They just don't vocalize it a lot. And I love to hear that normalized, that like guys want to be dads. Like, I think that's really cool because this world needs really good dads. And I'm thankful to have two good ones on the podcast today.
Well, what's interesting is I feel like our kids now know several other families where, kids are adopted and like it is a thing. But I didn't really grow up with any friends or people that I even really knew. So I don't know if it was as much of like I don't want to do that as much as just I wasn't aware or like
It wasn't on the
Exposed
radar.
to it.
exposed or knowledgeable or anything. It was just like, oh, why would you? Nobody I knew had really done that. So yeah.
So Tim, remind us, because I know the story, but remind our listeners, and you've shared this before, but so tell me how the conversation of adoption happened, because I know Mal was told you this when y'all were dating, so you knew oh yeah, my wife wants to adopt. But remind us, how did the conversation go when y'all were married and she's like, okay, we're gonna adopt. I want to adopt. I'm feeling this is good. What was your reaction? Your heart there. I'm curious.
I felt like we were done at 3, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that was a feeling of now, looking back, our family does feel complete with Mason, but it was maybe that was, just we're done, having our biological kids. So when it was hey, let's talk about this, I was just kind of I thought, that was before we had 3 kids, we were going to adopt, or whatever,
Yeah.
But we had some really close friends in our small group who went through the process, and that really helped a lot. We sat at Carrabba's with them and just had a long conversation about all of it, and was able to process that with Kevin, the husband. But initially I was I don't know. So
it took you a little bit of convincing then, I guess, after you guys had Lorelai,
for sure,
to jump in. Yeah. It's a little bit of a processing. What about you, Matt? When the conversation came up, did you bring it up? Did Rebecca bring it up? How did that go?
Sure. Yeah. So we we tried to have a second biological child, and it didn't work out. And, we really gave it a lot of thought and prayer. And since adoption was really on the table for us in the back of our minds, it made the decision even more easier for us and said, yeah, let's pursue this. So, we are strong believers that, every life is sacred, and we wanted to give the opportunity to a child who needs a loving family that opportunity. So we were immediately open to it after the more traditional routes were closed to us. So.
Mm-hmm. And the adoption
Love
journey is so different for everyone. Every single adoption looks different. And there's just so many unknowns. And I think that was what you probably struggled with the most, Tim, was just like the unknowns, and
Mm-hmm.
there was like the element of costs, and there was the element of timelines, and it feels so out of your control when you have all this paperwork. I don't know. What do each of you feel like was the biggest or the scariest part about entering into adoption as like head of a household, a husband and already a father? What was the biggest, scariest unknown for you?
I think for us, and I say us because I think both Becca and I really kind of share this, the health of the child, what is the baby going to be healthy? Is the mother healthy? But then, also the chance of this being a failed adoption and just going down the road. I think I was less concerned about that than Becca was. I know for Becca, that was a really big thing for her, and just kind of, how do we navigate this if this happens? So I think that was probably the scariest thing, is just the unknown of that. But we were very fortunate and blessed. We had an amazing adoption process, and it was for the most part pretty smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm. And I know that as a husband, even though, that was your wife's biggest worry, I know husbands carry that. You carry your wife's emotions, so I know that like kind of like falls onto you a bit too, whatever your wife is experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many unknowns in this process. And I think for just talking to you two guys and hearing what you're saying is, I feel like that was Adam, my husband's biggest thing too, is just like he had no control. There was no control. He's a big controller in most everything in his life and his business and everything. And he's just like, there's nothing in this that I can control. And that was really just uncomfortable for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I can hear you guys when you say that totally.
Yeah, I think mine was initially just financial, because I worked at a church and it was like, how are we going to do this? And then we've got a fourth kid and we need a bigger car and we need this, whatever. But as we got into the process, I think it became more of that too, like just the unknown, the lack of control, hey, your profile's getting shown. Oh, never mind. They didn't, okay, well, we'll go about our month or whatever, and then we'll do it again. And, like it just, that part was very like, well, no, we did everything we were supposed to do. Like we filled out all the forms and we got all the approval, like, so we should, be done soon. Right. And it's just, I'm very similar to your husband that way. And so that was hard for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. You guys are a lot alike.
Yep.
Gosh, so share with us like a turning point, if there was one, or like in your thoughts and your feelings towards adoption. Were you in the journey? Was it after you brought your sons home? Where was this turning point where you're like, okay, I'm comfortable?
All of
if
it
there was
worth
one.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, it was just definitely community and having people that you could discuss it with and have those conversations in a vulnerable manner, and like not be afraid to ask the hard questions or to admit that you're like scared or you don't want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like knowing, like I mentioned, the couple in our small group who had already gone before us and went through the process. Like that was huge. And just having other people that we could turn to. And, we had so many people support us, like by buying a growth chart or we had a random friend who got a big inheritance and like they tithed to our adoption off it. And that was like way out of the blue, like out of left field. We would have never expected like them to give versus like people we thought had a lot of, so it's like, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was just being open to your community to like let them support you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I'm so glad you have that. I love that you are saying that too, because Mal, just like you were saying about a lot of men saying like, yeah, I want to be a dad. I do maybe, I don't know if this is true for all guys in your life, but being vulnerable with each other as men and saying like, man, I'm having a hard time with this. This is really hard for me. I feel out of control, all of that. I feel like that is so good for guys to do together. Because I know as women, we do that a lot.
Yeah.
We are always talking and sharing our thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to hear you say that you had that community for yourself, whether it be as a couple or even just, with another dad. But Matt, what do you feel like was a turning point for you? Did you have that community as well?
Yeah, I actually think the community was a big part of that. We'd had so much support from family and friends. The monetary thing the financial aspect of it is a big deal. I work at a church as well. So, but we applied for grants and they just all came in, and everything was just provided. So having that network of support was just really great. And, honestly, our personal experience with the birth mother was probably another huge aspect of this as well. She was incredible. And I'm sure a lot of adoptive families can say this about the birth mom, one of the bravest people I know that I've ever met. It takes so much courage to do what they did. And that was really just kind of that extra push for us. And it was a no-brainer, especially after we met her.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like meeting her and being able to like enter into a relationship with her is what also brought you like comfort in the process as well?
Yeah, definitely.
I love that.
Gosh, I do. I love that. And that I can understand that feeling a little bit from our experience too, of like the feeling of, I guess, kind of like there's already a family there. Like when you meet her, you're like, gosh, the feeling of that love and care that you have and the admiration that you have for her already before the child's even here is just kind of like a bond. It is like a bond. And then you're like, gosh, now your heart's in it. And I'm glad that you felt peace. Sometimes for me, that makes me feel like a lot of the other feelings, but all good, but confusing. I love that brought you more comfort. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now I'd love to hear this next one. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say so I'm just gonna say, what would you guys say to a husband or a dad who's really struggling with the fact that their wives or spouse wants to move forward with this call or this desire to jump into the adoption process? What would you say to that dad who's like, no,
Come to the Funding Love Gala.
Yeah.
I second that.
And
okay, I'm interested
That's
to
it.
hear
No.
why. Why would you say that?
I just feel like a lot of people, like myself, like if I had come to the Funding Love Gala, like before we got married and really knew anything about adoption, I think that would have changed like my view on everything. Like just hearing, the stories directly from families and birth moms and like everything, So, but yeah, just like education and community, like, like
it's opening your eyes and your hearts to whole different perspectives that you don't even realize are a part of this community.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's a great answer.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, what about you?
Yeah, honestly, probably the same thing. I think community. If you know people who have gone through the adoption process, go have a meal with them. Go have coffee with them. Just ask questions. I tell this to people who are interested in adoption as well. I would have conversations with anyone who is considering it. But I think especially with Tim and Mal, what really just opened my eyes to adoption and just what it can do is Funding Love. I think that's just a perfect example of how a community of people can come together and really give back to these families who have chosen adoption. So, just over the years, it's been great getting to spend time with those families, doing some video for you guys. But yeah, I think community is definitely a huge part.
Yeah, Matt's gotten firsthand experience on the family trips, you know.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, that's cool. Well, I mean, I'd love that you're both saying if a dad were to come to you, be like, man, my wife wants to adopt. What do I say? I'm glad that you're both not like saying, don't do it. You know, I love
Run away.
that. That's encouraging.
Yes.
That's encouraging. Yeah, it certainly is a journey. And I mean, I just feel like a lot of our episodes, Mal, come down to this theme of like community, really, that people desire it. They need it. They want that. They just want that with each other. We're meant to do life together. We're meant to go through the good and the bad and all of that. And so, especially in this crazy journey of adoption, when there's so many complex feelings, and especially Matt, like you're saying, when you and Tim, when you're in it and you learn all sides, it like your heart is in a different way.
Yes.
Like your desire to want to be an adoptive mom or adoptive dad changes for different reasons. It doesn't go away, but like your idea of going into it, like we were saying, like we've said before on the episode last week, if we would have entered into the adoption process with the way that we think now, it would have been totally different for us, right, Mal? Like like you said, if you go back 8 years, you're like, oh my gosh, like if I know what I know now and all the perspectives, it's totally different. So that just speaks to community and learning and diving in. So like if you do have this desire, talk to other dads, other moms, other couples and learn more about it, because it's not easy either, right? Like it's not something that you should flippantly decide to do as a family. Like, yeah, sure, sounds fun. You know, there's a lot of feelings that go into it and a lot of other people that you need to consider. So I love your guys' wisdom that you're sharing.
Yes, for sure.
So before we wrap this episode though, guys, we are the Funding Love Podcast. So we like to end it with a little bit of extra love. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say here. So share with us, I'm going to come to you, Tim, first. Share with us one thing that you are loving in this season of life, what is filling you up, bringing you joy as a husband, a father, a man.
You know, I'm really loving yard work these days, which is really weird. You know, Mallory laughs at me. She's laughing now.
I'm giggling because I've called him an old man. I'm like, you're getting so old. Do you like want to wake up and water the grass?
You know,
that's adorable.
But listen, I'm not like a book reader.
Yeah.
So I don't have any like, you know, hey, these are my top 3 books that I'm reading right now. But I do like podcasts. So I enjoy the like watering the grass, doing whatever, and listening to a podcast. 2 of my favorites right now are Abraham's Wallet, which is, it's like 90%, well, maybe 80% money, you know, like guidance and wisdom, and 20% like leading your house in a great spiritual way. So it's like a cool mix. And then a podcast called A Better Life with Brandon Turner. That's a really great one. So between that and like my UGA podcast, that's, you know, you'll catch me outside doing that. But I don't know. In this season, we're just feel like we're doing some dreaming and like what's next and like all those things. So,
well, what you got to do now, Tim, is since you're into the yard work, you have to learn the Florida plants.
That's right.
You need to learn the hardy Florida native plants. So when y'all are in Florida, you can make sure that you have the right plants.
I know, because
the sun is going to scorch them.
I know.
You gotta learn it.
At the house in Florida, there's these weeds, and I'm like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like, what is this? So it's a whole different situation. So
a whole different situation.
It is.
And yeah, but listen, sounds like you found yourself a new hobby.
That's right.
That's adorable.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What about you, Matt? What are you loving in this season of life?
Oh, man, I'm loving a good nap.
No, that's a tired new dad of a baby.
A good bottle of bourbon and a good nap, you know. It's Matt Appleby right now.
Sleep whenever you can. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think just where we are in both ages, just the newborn phase and just being a part of that. But then also watching Evie grow up. You know, she's in kindergarten. and just seeing how great of a big sister she is. So she's incredible. She's amazing. And I think just, just anticipation of future things. We haven't gotten out of the house much, since he's only a couple months old, but that first Disney trip is looming. So definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Bro,
I love it.
She'll be 13 before you know it. So you better enjoy it. Caitlin, what did Libby say on the Instagram video y'all posted about life?
That's not how life goes.
Oh my gosh, I about fell out of my chair.
Yes.
Yeah, my husband, just for all those who are curious, my husband likes to decorate for Christmas really early. And it used to be November 1st on the Disney schedule. And then now he just likes to push it like a week. So November, I guess October 21st is the date now. And Libby's so distraught about it. Like, Dad, that is not how life goes. I mean, she's been saying it to him for a couple of weeks now. Like, it's not how it goes. Like, you got a Halloween. What is your problem? And she's just not getting it. They disagree. And so that's just the disagreement in our home.
Mason would agree with her. We actually put our Christmas stuff up this week because we're going to be gone. And then when we come back, it's going to be like almost Thanksgiving. And we were like, yeah, we want it to be but Mason is just like, but Halloween hasn't happened. Like, what are we doing?
Like, what are you doing, guys?
So,
I love it. That is so great. Matt, and I love that you mentioned that about Evie, because I was going to ask you how she was doing with having a little brother.
Oh, she's so great. So
it's so sweet to watch them, I'm sure.
Yeah, she's so sweet, and just the love that she already has for him. It's great to kind of witness and be part of.
Aw, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you guys are awesome. You guys are two of the cutest dads, and we're so grateful for you, how you love your families and your wives, and you run your household. So thank you for coming on this podcast and sharing some wisdom and being vulnerable. We love you, and we're so grateful.
Anytime. Let us know when you want to do a sports one. Me and Matt will be back. We'll be ready to go.
Perfect. You got it. Just tell us the sport and we'll prepare.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Well, once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in to this episode of the Funding Love Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Funding Love Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we would love it if you would help others to find us too. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts app, give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you are listening on Spotify or YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you will never miss an episode. If you decide to share our podcast, be sure to tag us on Instagram or Facebook to let us know. And just a reminder before we go, tickets to our Garden Gala, which will be held on April 26, 2024 at the Four Seasons Resort in Orlando, are on sale now. Garden Gala getaway packages are already selling fast and are extremely limited. So if you want to stay in the magic with your ticket package that includes one night at the Four Seasons Resort, be sure to grab that package today. Otherwise, grab your ticket or your table of 10 by visiting fundinglove.com/gala. We can't wait to see you there. When you attend our gala, donate online, shop our merchandise, or listen to our podcast, you are funding love.